frightening moments on board this Boeing 737 after officials say it slid off the runway right into this Jacksonville River. Several people injured, but amazingly, all survived.
It is a miracle. It could have ended we could be talking about a different story this evening.
Rescuers racing to the scene. 143 passengers and crew members on the Department of Defense charter forced to evacuate onto the wing, where they boarded rafts ferrying them to shore.
We climbed onto the wing. We couldn't tell where we were, whether it was a river or an ocean.
Let's bring in retired Marine Corps Colonel and ABC News contributor Steve Ganyard, who served in the Pentagon and as a fighter pilot. He joins us from Washington. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Eva.
As we just heard, there was severe weather at the time of this landing. What sort of challenges would that have created for the crew?
Well, not just severe weather, Eva, there were thunderstorms, and sometimes thunderstorms can create microbursts that actually increase the touchdown speed of the airplane. There was probably standing water on the runway, so an airplane can hydroplane just like you may feel your car sometimes when you're going down the highway. But in this case, they'll also look at, was there aircrew error? Did the pilots properly calculate their touchdown speed, and did they plan properly, or is there a mechanical problem, maybe with the brakes or the thrust reversers? But if you look at those pictures there, you can see how lucky not only the crew but the passengers on this airplane were. The St. John River is very shallow right at the end of the runway there at Navy Jacks, and if there had been a building or a drop-off there, this could have, as that captain said there, could have been a very different story.
This video, posted to social media, one of many on social media, captures just the terror, the horror passengers were experiencing as flames engulfed the Russian-made plane. This all happened as it was making an emergency landing at Moscow's main airport just minutes after taking off. 41 people this morning confirmed as dying in the crash, and when you see this new video just released this morning by investigators, it is incredible to think more than 30 people survived. They scrambled to safety down those emergency chutes.
Next to the disaster zone in northeastern Illinois, that massive explosion at a silicone plant shaking the ground. You saw the moment right there on surveillance video. At least one worker killed, several hurt, and officials now fearing the worst for those still missing in the wreckage. ABC's Zachary Quiche with that tonight.
This sudden explosion rocked this Illinois chemical plant, leaving it unrecognizable. Flames shot in the air as emergency crews raced to the scene. Dozens of firefighters battled the blaze on the ground and from ladders above.
Very, very loud explosion coming from the area. 10-4, it did shake our building, muffle 911.
Debris was sent flying for blocks, but the blast was felt miles away.
All of a sudden, my lights flickered, and I heard this really loud explosion, and the whole building shook.
This surveillance video shows the moment that factory exploded and that rattling aftershock. Officials say it happened around 9:30 Friday night. Cleaning crews had just left, but there were a handful of people inside. Daylight revealed the utter devastation. At least one person found dead, 2 more are missing, 4 have been hospitalized.
Israeli rockets struck Gaza overnight on Saturday and into Sunday morning, continuing the hours of heavy fire between Palestinian militants and Israel that began earlier Saturday. The Israeli Defense Forces said nearly 250 rockets were fired from Gaza into Israel, and that its Iron Dome air defense system had intercepted dozens of them. Israel retaliated with dozens of strikes targeting the Palestinian enclave. Several Palestinians were killed, including a pregnant mother and her baby.
Breaking news overnight. Right at midnight, President Trump imposed new tariffs on $200 billion worth of Chinese imports to the U.S. This dramatic escalation in the trade war comes just ahead of last-ditch talks today, with China promising to retaliate, American consumers caught in the middle. Our senior national correspondent Terry Moran covering all the latest from the White House. And Terry, the president been rolling tweets for the last several minutes on this.
He's busy on this subject because, George, the stakes could not be higher. The world's 2 largest economies already locked in a trade war, and now President Trump escalating. As of today, as you just pointed out, massive new 25% tariffs. Those are U.S.-imposed government taxes on everything imported from China, on thousands of goods, from frozen fish to building materials to consumer goods like televisions. Consumers are going to pay.
Today, the moment the market's been dreading, China's clapback at the U.S. as it slaps retaliatory tariffs on products made in the U.S. starting 18 days from now.
Can you guarantee a trade deal with China by June 1st?
We're in a great position right now, no matter what we do. Yeah, I think China wants to have it.
But talks have stalled as the president bets he can get Beijing to blink first.
We've been taken advantage of on all of our trade deals, practically. This is a very positive step.
The tit for tat could cost many Americans more for things like luggage, electronics, and toiletries. It's already frustrating farmers trying to sell their crops to China, like the Hartmans. Alexis hopes to be the 6th generation to take over her family's Illinois farm, which will only survive if prices stop dropping and China starts buying.
In order to keep farming, we need to be able to keep up with technology, production, and stuff like that. And in order to do that, we need the Chinese market.
While the president says there is no reason for the U.S. consumer to pay the tariffs, that's not true. When companies have to pay more for what they buy from China, they can pass those costs to consumers, as even the president's own economic advisor acknowledges.
Both sides will pay. Both sides will pay in these things.
And we're following breaking news from the Middle East, where a series of sabotage attacks are targeting critical oil supplies. The attacks are reportedly aimed at oil tankers owned by Saudi Arabia and other countries. They come amid warnings from the U.S. about a growing threat from Iran. MTS Tayyab is monitoring these developments from London. MTS, good morning.
Good morning. We got a really tense situation in the Persian Gulf right now. According to the United Arab Emirates, 4 vessels in the Persian Gulf were, in their words, sabotaged. Saudi Arabia also says that 2 of its vessels were also targeted. Now, this is one of the vessels that was apparently sabotaged, but it shows no signs of damage. However, a spokesperson for the Saudi-owned Bahri Oil Company confirmed that a vessel it manages had been hit by an explosion. No one was injured, and the ship is stable. We've also just learned a Norwegian registered tanker is in the area was also damaged by a floating object. What's going on now follows warnings from the Trump administration that Iran or its, quote, proxies are allegedly threatening American interests in the Gulf. Iran said the attacks were, quote, worrying and called for a full investigation of a possible, what it described as a conspiracy orchestrated by ill-wishers. Whatever the case, the tensions here have only risen since President Trump withdrew from the 2015 nuclear deal brokered between Tehran and world powers.
A terrifying sight on the Hudson River here in New York City today, a helicopter crashing into the river. It happened just after taking off after refueling, preparing to pick up passengers, instead spinning out of control, losing altitude and crashing into the Hudson, ending up upside down. The pilot was the only one on board, escaping with his life. Tonight, how he was rescued. ABC's Eva Pilgrim is along the Hudson tonight.
A near brush with death, a helicopter pilot escaping after this terrifying crash in New York City. Watch as the chopper spins right into the Hudson River.
Helicopter just crashed.
It had taken off shortly after refueling to go pick up passengers when something went wrong.
We were looking out on the water, and then all of a sudden we saw this splash. And we looked out, and there was a helicopter.
Authorities say the chopper lost altitude.
It crash landed into the water approximately 150 feet from the helipad.
The helicopter's flotation devices deployed, but with the blades cutting through the water, the chopper flipped over.
We see the helicopter, and at first maybe I thought it was a stunt because it was starting to wobble a little bit, and then it started to become a little bit more suspicious, and the next thing you know, it disappeared.
On board, the 34-year-old pilot was able to escape, standing on one of those flotation devices until a passing ferry boat picked him up.
I called out to him, he said okay, and he came right up the ladder.
This incident unfolding about 14 months after 5 passengers lost their lives in New York's East River, unable to escape a chopper that crashed into the icy waters during a sightseeing flight. Tonight, the NTSB investigating what caused this latest helicopter to go down. That pilot walking away with only a cut to his hand.
We're learning new details tonight about the crash of an F-16 fighter jet in Riverside, California. A dash cam captured the moment the plane, armed with live munitions, fell from the sky yesterday, smashing through the roof of a warehouse. Jamie Yukas is there.
Nearly a mile-long perimeter around the crash site remained off limits to the public 24 hours after a fighter jet plummeted through the roof of this warehouse near the March Air Reserve Base.
That's a military airplane in our building.
Business owner Frank Sandoval and his 8 workers were inside the building when the F-16 crashed.
We heard a loud boom, windows blew open, doors blew open, ceiling fixtures falling down. Literally, we all could have been in that area at any given time.
You can't believe you're alive.
Yeah, go.
The pilot ejected moments before impact. Officials say warehouse sprinklers help prevent a large fire. With the area still cordoned off and a nearby freeway shut down, an explosives team combed through the wreckage. But military officials repeatedly evaded questions about exactly what was on that plane.
U.S. military officials say U.S. fighter jets intercepted 4 Russian bombers and 2 Russian fighter jets Monday. The aircrafts were spotted off the coast of Alaska. In a statement, the North American Aerospace Defense Command said the Russian bombers and fighters did not enter U.S. nor Canadian airspace at any time. Russia's Ministry of Defense released a statement saying in part, quote, long-range pilots make regular flights over neutral waters. All flights of the Russian Air and Space Force are carried out in strict accordance with the International Airspace Management System without violating the borders of other states. The interception comes as tensions escalate between the U.S. and Russia and follows a meeting between Secretary of State Mike Pompeo and Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov last week. The two nations were unable to reach a consensus.
U.S. warplanes have intercepted Russian bombers and fighter jets off the Alaskan coast for the second day in a row. The North American Aerospace Defense Command confirmed Wednesday that 2 bombers accompanied by 2 fighter jets entered the Alaskan Air Defense Identification Zone late Tuesday. They said the jets did not enter U.S. or Canadian sovereign airspace at any time.
A manhunt is underway in France tonight following a bomb attack in the city of Lyon. At least 13 people, including a child, were hurt. Ian Lee has the late-breaking details.
Security tightened in France tonight after a package bomb detonates outside a bakery in Lyon. Police and soldiers cordoned off the area and are telling people to stay away. An eyewitness says he found 6 victims on the ground with lots of blood flowing. France's interior minister ordered security increased around sports, cultural, and religious sites. Officials fear there could be more bombs. Police hunt for this man, described as being in his 30s. A security camera captured him pushing a bike with a bag while wearing a mask and sunglasses. Authorities are asking for the public's help in identifying him.
A man set himself on fire not far from the White House Wednesday. That's according to the Secret Service. The incident happened at the Ellipse, north of the National Mall. Officials say first responders were able to put out the flames. An unidentified man was then taken to the hospital with life-threatening injuries. His motive remains unknown.
Record-breaking, devastating tornado pattern that could threaten more Americans today. Think about this. For 12 straight days, at least 8 tornadoes every single day have been reported across the Central Plains in the Midwest. Now, that is the longest stretch of its kind in nearly 40 years.
That's right, and this dangerous weather is blamed for 15 deaths in the past 2 weeks. In the past 30 days, there have been more than, get this, 500 reported tornadoes.
This is what an F4 tornado did here just days ago. One of the strongest storms in the season. Just take a look. This house is just torn apart. Those rooms completely exposed. Now, over the past 2 weeks, we've seen nearly 400 tornadoes from coast to coast.
Okay, there's a tornado that's touched down here.
A barrage of severe storms striking overnight, tornadoes touching down for a 13th straight day. This was the scene in Canton, Texas. You can see a structure being torn apart.
Oh, power flashes, power flashes.
That twister mangling traffic lights, destroying this gas station. Luckily, none of the gas pumps igniting. In Iowa, this twister tearing across a road. In Illinois, straight line winds were powerful enough to flip a small airplane. A tornado near Kansas City Tuesday was a powerful EF4 with winds up to 170 miles per hour. That tornado on the ground for 32 miles, leaving a trail of destruction. Flood warnings are in effect this morning along the Arkansas River, which is now at historically high levels, more than twice as high as it was just 10 days ago. And right now, every county in Oklahoma is under a state of emergency, with more rain threatening already swamped areas.
We begin with reports of new tornadoes on the ground just a short time ago, this time in Pennsylvania. In fact, there are warnings and watches right now from Texas all the way up to the Northeast. It has been relentless and now deadly. The outbreak now in its 12th straight day, more than 50 tornadoes reported in just the past 24 hours. This one right here in Grant County, Indiana. Tonight, the devastating scene across Ohio. They have now confirmed multiple EF3 tornadoes, winds up to 140 miles an hour. Look at this. Homes in Dayton completely destroyed tonight. Schools and businesses damaged too. And all of this as we also watch a flooding emergency unfold across several states as well. That home right there sinking right into the river near Crescent, Oklahoma.
Military tensions between Russia and the United States in the region show no sign of dying down. Now, before departing for his state visit to the UK, President Trump accused Russia, Syria, and Iran of conducting a ruthless bombing campaign in the rebel-held city of Idlib. And now the United States is accusing Russia of putting a U.S. Navy surveillance aircraft at risk during a dangerous intercept near Syria. But Russia is arguing that it acted reasonably and in defense. RT's Rachel Blevins has the story.
Tensions appear to be heating up near Syria, where the United States is accusing Russia of recklessly interfering with a Navy surveillance aircraft, while Moscow says the plane needed to be intercepted because it was flying too close to a Russian military facility. The incident happened near Syria's border over the Mediterranean Sea, where Russia claims that it only acted after a U.S. surveillance plane approached its military facility in Syria. But a statement from the U.S. Navy's 6th Fleet claims their aircraft was intercepted by a Russian jet 3 times in 175 minutes, and while the first and third interactions were safe, the second interaction was determined to be unsafe, putting the American pilots and crew at risk. The U.S. argued that its operations were consistent with international law and that it was Russia who acted irresponsibly. But Russia's defense ministry released a statement saying that its fighter jet only responded after it saw the U.S. plane as an aerial target.
That high-seas showdown between a Russian destroyer and a U.S. Navy guided missile cruiser in the Philippine Sea. That's the Russian ship appearing to steer dangerously close to the USS Chancellorsville as it was preparing for a helicopter to land on its deck. This photograph from a surveillance plane shows the 2 ships on what appears to be a collision course. The American ship taking emergency steps, waving that helicopter away and thrusting the ship into reverse. Tonight, U.S. officials are calling the Russian maneuver unsafe and unprofessional, even as Russia is blaming the Americans. ABC's chief global affairs correspondent Martha Raddatz starts us off with what the images reveal.
Tonight, the war of words over what could have been a catastrophe in the Philippine Sea. That ship you see, according to the U.S. 7th Fleet, is a Russian destroyer barreling dangerously near the USS Chancellorsville. Both vessels armed with missiles and powerful guns coming within 50 to 100 feet of colliding. So close, at one point, you could see Russian sailors who appear to be sunbathing. According to the U.S. Navy, this began around 11:45 while the American guided missile cruiser was maintaining a straight course as a helicopter was about to land on the ship. And that's when a Russian destroyer, the Admiral Vinogradov, which was traveling behind the Chancellorsville, sped up. Navy officials say the, quote, irresponsible and reckless actions of the Russian ship forced the Chancellorsville to wave off their helicopter and reverse all engines at full throttle.
A man is under arrest and facing federal charges after trying to buy explosives he allegedly wanted to use in a Times Square attack. Sources tell CBS 2 the arrest follows a sting operation by the New York Joint Terrorism Task Force, which includes the NYPD and FBI. The suspect was arrested while purchasing what he believed to be explosives from undercover agents. Sources say the man was acting alone and that the public was never in any danger. He's set to appear today in Brooklyn federal court.
Fast-moving brush fire shut down one of America's most popular theme parks. The blaze throwing a huge plume of smoke towards Six Flags Magic Mountain just north of Los Angeles. Families initially told to get out by park management before fire officials turned around and said it was too dangerous to leave. Tonight, those guests have begun to evacuate, and our Marcia Gonzalez is there.
Tonight, a scary scene near one of America's biggest amusement parks. A fast-moving brush fire breaking out near Six Flags Magic Mountain outside of Los Angeles. At least 9 people transported to hospitals for smoke exposure. You can see the thick plumes billowing just behind some of the park's popular water slides. Guests initially told by the park to evacuate. Panicked parents and children racing to the exits. You could see the blaze burning with fire crews nearby. But LA County Fire asking those guests to stay put while 100 county firefighters battled the flames.
When New Yorkers heard that an aircraft hit a building today, many of them panicked, even if it was just for a moment. That's what life after 9/11 is like in New York. Today it was a helicopter that crash landed on a high-rise building. It happened in Manhattan's theater district. Smoke was seen rising from the roof. Buildings were evacuated. It was the pilot who died. Police and the mayor say tonight it appears this was a tragic accident and not terror-related. Jerika Duncan is there.
It looks like it's coming from a building on 7th Avenue. We're trying to confirm.
Reports of a fire on the roof of 787 7th Avenue flooded phone lines just before 2 this afternoon.
He's confirmed it's a helicopter on the roof of the location at this time. It's a helicopter, 10-4.
As people poured from the 54-story office building and others nearby, emergency crews rushed in.
I feel this rumble, you hear a bam, and then my chair moved a little bit, and I'm wondering what's going on.
These photos show the smoldering scene, parts of the helicopter reduced to rubble. The pilot, Tim McCormick, was flying this private helicopter at a high rate of speed through low clouds and heavy rain, crashing through airspace restricted due to its proximity to Trump Tower.